Welcome back to the Girl Hockey Dad podcast. It has been 2 weeks since we've released a new episode, and I hope as I'm recording this that it's not more than that. This weekly podcast has definitely taken me more than a week to get new episodes ready, and here I am again missing a week last week, so we're 2 weeks in between episodes. I apologize. This is not something that I'm going to make a habit of. I definitely want to focus on getting more scheduled in my recording and all of those things. I did overpromise slightly on the interviews. I underestimated how busy the guests were going to be with the PWHL training camps. That's the only hint you're going to get for the time being about who may be on the next episode. But those are forthcoming. Please bear with me, and I'll make sure they're good quality and that it's good content for sure. Right now, even as of recording this right now, it is pure unadulterated excitement with the PWHL at the moment. The schedules for all of the season's games were just released minutes ago. I'm re-recording this intro right now. And yeah, there's a new website live today. There's a ton happening, and I'm only going to touch on that really briefly because I intend to do a smaller, shorter episode about tournaments and news and things happening right now and over the last couple of weeks. That's going to be separate from this episode because I'm trying to keep things a little short and consumable. And yeah, so for this week, the discussion, the chat, my thoughts off the top of my head are around what's important in the game. Our kids are the ones playing, not the parents. That's pretty much all I want to say about it. Let's get into it.
So this is going to be a topic that is close to home for me and my kids, and something that has shown up more and more online over the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, and even up to, honestly, the last little bit before I started recording this. I guess what we're going to talk about is the whole hockey experience for your kids. They're the ones playing the sport. They're the ones in the room. They're the ones that are really experiencing it every day. We as parents are trying to help them along in whatever way we think is best. And honestly, so many parents, myself included, didn't play organized sports growing up like hockey, and certainly didn't play in the era of all the pressure and all of the expectation and hype around minor hockey. I'm sure there's women who played that have never experienced the way things are right now. I know for a fact I've spoken with some players who are now coaching or have moved on past their playing career who are amazed at the way things actually are for our minor hockey players and how much different it is, the way they see it was and the way it is now. From an experience standpoint, from how much is expected of the girls, how much time and effort is put in, how much pressure gets put on from coaches and from organizations and everything else. And I'm not saying that any of that is bad, but it is definitely different. So what I've kept seeing over the last few days, and this one post that's just ringing in my head, is remember that this is a team sport, and that whatever happens at home, conversations that you have at the dinner table could disassemble a team's chemistry faster than anything you could do specifically to those players on that team. And I know I'm butchering that, and that's fine, but the general idea is when you have your kids at home, when you have your girls at the dinner table, in the car ride home, sitting and having a meal before a game or after a game, the things that you say, they are taking back into that team experience. And if you are not aware of that, those conversations could do so much damage to that chemistry or that team experience for those players, and you might not realize it. Now, I have personally seen this firsthand, and it is one of the saddest things in the world to see, where you have a group of players who, for all intents and purposes, get along well with each other. There's no reason why they wouldn't. And all of a sudden, you start to see a bit of a distance growing between them and some of their teammates. I want to go back a step before I get into that. I want to start with a little story about where I saw my daughter really fall in love with hockey, and the things that I've noticed are the most important to them actually. And then I've got another little story about a friend and his daughter. and her hockey experience. So I don't want to make any generalizations when I'm talking about this, and I'm going to make a comment about boys hockey, and I've learned through some conversations over the last little bit that there's some real direct crossovers. I spoke about goaltenders and some things in the last episode that a good friend of mine whose son is playing U12 or U13, he reiterated that they're very similar experiences, and we ended up having a huge conversation about just minor hockey in general, and that was awesome. But where I want to start with this is in Learn to Skate or First Shift in Canada, they have this program, Canadian Tire and Bauer got together and they put on the First Shift. And this has been the best thing I've seen happen in minor hockey, period, where you're getting kids out fully outfitted in equipment for about $400 and including some ice times. And there's a bunch of volunteers out and helping kids really experience what it's like to play hockey the first time and see if they have any interest in it. And for me, that's actually where the hockey starts for both of my girls. Now, my oldest started playing with, well, a handful of girls that she didn't know at the time. She was too young, but my wife and I, we were friends with a couple of families whose kids wanted to get into hockey as well. So this first year house league happens, and I would say that the experience was great in the way that my daughter enjoyed it. I would say my daughter's first year of hockey was good. I coached, I think that year, I actually off the top of my head, I know I did the second year, but she enjoyed it. But mostly what she enjoyed was the friendship that she made between a couple of girls on the team. And going into the following season, the whole reason she wanted to play was to be able to play with this friend of hers. And that friendship stayed and over time, and I think I told a bit of this story at some point, but my oldest wanted to go the rep route, and her friend wasn't totally interested in it at the time, which is funny because over time they did end up both playing rep, different levels or whatever. But those two girls now are friends in high school, and that's amazing. Like this is the whole point of this conversation or this discussion. I've focused so much personally on the hockey over the years, and it's not been until the last year and a half where I've started to really realize that's got very little to do with it. It is such a relational sport. You have this team, and I mean, this is going to sound dumb coming from me. I grew up a BMX rider in a solo sport that, I had all my friends and everything else, but it wasn't about the team itself. In a team sport, you're building these friendships and these bonds with these other people, and that's what makes this experience incredible. It's what makes it why they want to go to the rink in the first place. Yeah, there's some kids that absolutely fall in love with the sport and development and training and all of those things, but that's not every single kid. So many of them are built around the relationship and around the friendship and the experiences and the hotels and the tournaments and the travel and all that stuff, which is, all the best parts of hockey. And here's where things have gone sideways. When you start getting into Tier 1 hockey, and I know it's not exclusive to Tier 1 hockey, but I think when you get into Tier 1 hockey, you start to experience the crazy hockey parents and the dynamics, these crazy dynamics of intensity. And of course, you're talking about people's time and money and their families, and it can get really amped up really, really fast. And what I personally noticed a year or two ago was comments coming from players on the ice as young as 11 and 12 years old about the performance of the team and who's scoring what and how many goals and this and that. And I started to realize, oh man, these kids are having conversations with their families outside of the rink that is bringing in a really negative dynamic into the day-to-day of the team, into what is killing the culture of the team. And I don't believe that it's malicious, and I don't believe that it's ever done intentionally. Of course it's not. Nobody would want that. That's why I wanted to talk about this in the first place, is now that I'm seeing it posted about more and more, and the more conversations I have lead to the same point of, man, I didn't realize, or maybe we don't realize how much of an impact what we talk to our kids about has on the team itself. Like, am I coming home and having a conversation about, like, man, that was a great game. Everybody played so hard and you guys worked as such a team, and regardless of the outcome, you really put your all out there? Or are we sort of subtly nitpicking other people's performance and what so-and-so did or what so-and-so did and how that impacted the game? I like to think that I don't do that as a parent, but I'm sure that I actually do and have at times, and that's awful. I hate to think about it that way. But I never really thought about the impact that that could have on the locker room. And if from that my kid's going onto the ice in their head thinking about, oh man, so-and-so is not performing, so-and-so is not doing this, and of course that's going to change the way they act towards other players. And that's awful. That's not why we do this. That's not why any kid plays sports. I think it's interesting that so many years into this hockey experience, I'm really sitting here thinking about what it means to have a team that's really gelled and really together. And of course, you look at it from a winning team has a great culture and they all work together and they all want to win and they all want to do this and do that. And of course, it's not always going to be perfect. There's no such thing. But how much emphasis are we putting on the positive relational development of our kids in the hockey system? And are we putting any emphasis on that? I have now experienced a handful of different coaching styles. I personally had the peak of my coaching career in novice house league, or local league. I understand that. I absolutely adore coaching, but I also know that I have no business coaching tier 1 or even really tier 2 hockey. I love being on the ice, but I don't have any interest in the additional stuff that goes on when you get into tier 1 and tier 2 hockey. I look at the way I coached and what I wanted to get out of that season or what I wanted the kids to get out of that season, and it was all experiential. I wanted them to have the most fun they could possibly have. I wanted to be that push them hard, but also just know that you're there to have the most fun on the ice. And I think to this day, it's probably annoying when I help as an on-ice helper because I'm the good time Charlie. I just want to get out there and have a good time. I want them to all develop, but I also want them to all have a smile on their face. Just the same as I correct my kids, I correct kids on the ice. And I sometimes leave thinking why are you doing that? It's now clear, it's becoming more clear that it's probably not the right idea. Or I don't even know if I want to say that, if it's not the right idea, but this is something to think about. I'm out there to help coach. Am I doing the most I can to increase the positive experience of these kids, or am I trying to push them as far as I can in the sport that they're playing?
When it really comes down to it, I don't know if I've spent enough time talking to my girls, talking to my daughters about what it is that they love the most about the sport of hockey or about any sport that they play, whether it's soccer or volleyball or hockey or whatever. It's just been in the last few years that I've sort of started to look around and wonder, well, why as they get older, is it getting so difficult to keep everybody engaged that's been engaged for years? Like those same kids that had huge smiles and were just loving being at the rink. Well, when did it change? And I know everybody grows up and they get different priorities and jobs and relational things change and all of that. But I still think fundamentally there's something happening, or there's things happening that we're not paying enough attention to. And I don't know if I'm crazy saying this out loud because I'm literally hosting a podcast about minor hockey, but all you need to do is scroll through Instagram or TikTok and see how many coaching podcasts and those rah go get 'em posts about no one cares about your struggles or this or that. What do you bring into the ice? And there's so many things that add pressure to our kids to perform and to perform well. And it seems like it's way heavier on the side of performance than it is on the side of enjoyment and life skills development. I think if we're all honest with each other for a minute, I mean, I don't want to have that conversation with anybody where it's like, well, my kid's not going to play pro, my kid's not going to the NHL, and that's not even what it is. It's the comments that are like, well, none of these kids are going to play pro. None of these kids are going to do this or that. Well, maybe not, but maybe so. Maybe they play post-secondary. Maybe they play NCAA, high school, whatever. Now maybe they play pro. And that's up to those kids and those families and all of that. And I'm not saying that I am 100% not the person that's like, we're just here for fun. Who cares if we win games? I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, you can be both competitive and compassionate at the same time. You can have kids that are striving to do their best, but also be the best version of themselves they can be and bring up their teammates around them and really experience what it's like to be a good teammate and a good person. And those are life skills. It doesn't matter if you play past high school or even play high school. If your kid starts in novice and the focus is on being a good teammate and positive development of the person, and alongside of that is the hockey skills development and everything else, what you're going to wind up with is a kid that gets to high school that has probably pretty good coping skills, has a good attitude towards winning and losing and success and failure. I mean, I am not a psychologist by any stretch of the imagination, but it sort of makes sense. And I've experienced this. Like I keep saying now, I'm seeing real time what it looks like to make changes, to have different team experiences and different coaches and different people around you, and to see year over year the difference in the makeup of a team just based on attitudes of the players. To tie it all back to the U16 double year, all of that stuff, when you have a major minor separation, you're playing sometimes with, grade 9s could be playing with grade 8s. The grade 8s are going through a huge change, or they're about to go into high school and they're stressing out about that. And you've got grade 9s that are stressing out because they're in grade 9 and they're worried about their tests and study habits and everything else that's going on in their lives. And then on top of that, they want to perform well in their hockey centers, and that's awesome. But where's the focus? I think it's worth a discussion. It's worth my time to talk about for sure this week. But what are we really focusing on? And you know what? I'll probably leave it at that. Thank you everybody again for tuning in for another episode. It's getting more and more overwhelming, the support that I'm getting here. And at the end of the day, the reason I even started doing this was to bring more awareness and more eyes and more ears onto women's hockey. And it feels sometimes a bit opportunistic because women's sport is blowing up right now over the last few years for sure. But in the hockey world, we're definitely about to see some crazy new things happening. We're already seeing them, but the next few years are exciting. And I feel so lucky that we're getting to be a bit of a part of it, or I guess I'm getting to be a part of it in some way. So yeah, thanks again everyone for tuning in. Next week, the short form about tournaments and results, and then fingers crossed I'll have the next interview up and ready to go, and try not to let everybody down. So yeah, thanks so much for listening again, and I will see you around the rink.